following presentation is an Delmarva Studios production.
Welcome back, Truth Seekers from around the world. It's time for the Flat Earth Files. How's everybody doing? I hope this podcast finds you well as we try to navigate our way through bizarro world. Each and every day just gets a little more interesting, doesn't it? We have a lot of great things planned for you in the coming weeks. I think we have 7 more interviews scheduled between now and the 3rd week of May, which at that point, I'm probably looking to do my little 2-week break. Twice a year, I take 10 days to 2 weeks off, completely pull out of the rabbit holes and spend a little time in normie land and just... it's good mental health practice. I tell people all the time on these podcasts, you can't be down the rabbit hole 24/7. And, now I'm doing 2 of these podcasts. I definitely need to take the break twice a year, which I usually do the end of May and then the October-November time frame as well. But luckily, we've put out a lot of content for you guys. And during those 2 weeks, you can go back and re-listen to some of those podcasts and enjoy them. And we'll be fired back up. Our batteries will be recharged and we'll be ready to go again in early June. But we still have a few more weeks of great content coming your way. And during those 2 weeks off, I'm going to look to see if I can come up with some kind of schedule, because I do want to start doing more video. I've said many times, and you'll hear in the emails and one of the voice messages that I'll be playing for you, that, specifically with Flat Earth, it can be a bit difficult to explain some of these things just over audio. So that is something that I want to work on. I haven't done a lot of video recently. When I first kicked off my other podcast, I was doing quite a bit of video. It is certainly more time consuming. But with this type of content, with the Flat Earth, with trying to explain things, video is much easier. At the same time, I don't like to use it as a crutch, right? Well, I'd like to explain it, but I can't because video would be, it's just, we'll start using, kind of citing and supporting documents with video that we can refer to. That's one of my goals once we get past this first break coming up here in a few weeks. But I truly appreciate everybody's emails, comments, concerns. I get a lot of messages on Instagram and on the websites. I just appreciate everyone. 99% of the people out there are good people. You're always going to have the trolls. It is what it is. Not going to lose any sleep over that, for sure. Let's kick off today's episode. Here's what we're going to do. I've got 4 messages that I'm going to play that are left on the website. And again, you can do so by going to theflatearthfiles.com. And on the front page, you'll see that the SpeakPipe leave a message link. You can do so on any device that has a microphone. And for some reason on the Flat Earth Files, it only lets you leave a 90-second message. Because on my other website, you can leave up to 10 minutes. So I'm not sure what the disparity is. I still have a ton of storage. But either way, we have 4 messages. One I've played before, but I want to replay. And that is this message here.
Hi from Australia. I have been trying to send you multiple emails. I do believe your email address is being censored, as I cannot seem to send a single email to the flatearthfiles@gmail.com.
And again, that is an issue that I've had, or I should say I've heard from people trying to reach out to me from Canada, Australia, and the UK. Not every single one, but certainly there have been people who have mentioned that. Way around it, you can leave a message just like this individual did, or you can connect with me on Skype, and I need to get on that today. I haven't had a chance to get on there in the last few days. I need to catch up and see if there's any messages. But you can connect with me on Skype. It's george.hobbs5. Again, it's george.hobbs5. And again, all these things I share with you, they're usually in the show description, so you don't have to worry about writing them down, especially if you're working or you're driving. Just go to the show description, and many of the things that I speak about here are located right there within the show description. All right. All right, let's play our next message.
You know, before my wife was woke to the deceptions, I asked her, babe, what would you do if you found out the earth was not spinning and we're not flying through space and that the sun just circles our earth to keep us warm and give us life, but the earth would never move? And she thought about it for 5 seconds, and she said, I would feel safe. I think we should think about that. Why do we got to fight and worry? You know, the Bible specifically multiple times tells us to worry is a sin and not to worry. God put us here. We are safe. We're not flying through space, susceptible to asteroids and meteorites and everything else that they'd like us to worry about. Now my wife knows. Now she knows everything. She's into it. She gets it. But I just wanted to say that it's so weird. People fight it so bad because you think they'd be.
And there you go. The message cuts out, but you get the gist of it. They like to push the fear on us, don't they? It seems like once a month you'll see something come across the news cycle that a meteor came within 346 miles of the earth, or how it's always some different number. And a lot of the times there is meaning behind the numerology they use, but that is part of their agenda, to keep us in fear and to depend on them, right? We always talk about giving up a little bit of liberty for a little bit of security. And the exact message that was just shared with us by this listener can go back to what we've endured for the last 3 years. What did they say? Right? There's this dangerous thing going around the world, and if you don't roll up your sleeve and subject yourself to this, magical elixir, you're gonna not only endanger yourself but other people. It's the constant fear porn, and it talks about. I think there's an email coming up that I'm going to read that actually quotes a Bible verse talking about don't believe in man. You're setting yourself up for failure when you do those type of things. So great message, and thank you very much for taking the time to leave it. And again, sorry you got cut off. For some reason, it's only allowing 90 seconds right now. All right, our next message comes from Jim.
Absolutely love your podcast here in Middle Tennessee. I've listened to every single one of them. I listen to everything I can, Flat Earth, when I have time. I've been into it for a while. I kind of get it. Y'all hit on something very serious about the video portions. A lot of people cannot comprehend by listening. You have to have a chart. You have to have a graph. You have to have an explanation, because the truth is they don't understand how it works daily. Every day they see things, they just accept it. So you try to disprove how something works, it's like Chinese math. They're not going to get it because they don't even understand how it supposedly works now without the charts and the graphs and the pictures. I mean, it's sad to say, but it's hard. You're doing a good job. You're doing all you can on audio, and there's not much more anybody to ask of you. I'm just saying that a lot of people got to have that visual, man. But look, I just wanted to drop a hello, George. I love the podcast, everything you're doing. Love it, absolutely love it. Good job, bro.
Thank you, brother. Jim from Middle Tennessee. Exactly what I was alluding to when we kicked off this podcast during this little hiatus here at the end of May. 10 days, 2 weeks. I want to figure out a schedule where I can do regular podcasts, where I can interview people, but I also need to ensure I give myself enough time to start doing videos, because these type of things are important, because like Jim said, it's very difficult for them. Like, many of them don't even understand heliocentrism, and I think many of us could raise our hand and say guilty as charged at some point prior to being awake. Nobody knew. Like, if you would have asked me in 1994 how far the sun was away, I would have been like, I don't know, dude. I would have given a random answer. And if you follow David Weiss and watch his interviews, that's one of the first questions he asks. And 90% of the time, the people generally don't know. Now, most people do know that the Earth goes 1,000 miles per hour, and it's 25 or 24 to 25,000 miles in circumference, as the heliocentrism model says, because we understand the 24-hour cycle, which, again, I'm just talking about the heliocentric portion of it. But outside of that, how far is the moon and all these other type of things that the ordinary average person, again, including myself before I was awake, we just don't know. So it's important that we do. Video is extremely helpful. Right, it's extremely helpful. We can point these things out, PowerPoint slides, etc. So that's something that I want to work on. I already have a Rumble channel. We have a lot of people subscribed, and the Lost History of Flat Earth has gotten, I think, almost 10,000 views on there already. I did do one video, the one where Justin Trudeau came out and mocked Flat Earth. I did a little 4 or 5 minute video there that got a lot of views there, but it's something I need to be more, I need to do more often. I need to be more consistent so people can listen to the podcast during the day when they're at work or traveling in their car. But at night, or most importantly, if they're trying to spread the message, instead of saying, here, listen to this, you can say, hey, watch this, and people are more receptive to the video side of it. So I will work on that. Thank you, Jim, from Middle Tennessee, for the kind message. Lastly, we have Fernando from, I think it was Brazil.
Hi, George. This is Fernando from Brazil. I'd like to thank you for all your searching for truth. Thanks God. God bless you. And I was very interested in this flat Earth, but I think that this God's made is perfect, so it doesn't matter if it's triangle, it's trapezoid, or something else. But I know this is important to always go for the truth, like William Cooper said. And I'd like to ask you what about the tides? Because those countries that is the Ecuador line, the tides varies about 9 feet, and you go south, the tides varies only 1 feet. How that's possible for the flat Earth? And what about earthquakes? What is the explanation of earthquakes? If the Earth is flat, so we shouldn't have earthquakes. And what is the shape of this flattened Earth? Is it flat in the superface? But what is this face? It's oval. It's cylindrical. It's round. It's a square.
There you go. Thank you, Fernando. And again, it got cut off there at the 90-second mark. Thank you so much for listening, sir. And as you can tell, this movement is truly a worldwide movement. Thank you, all the way from Brazil. And a couple things to kind of opine on. He hit a home run when he said God made us all and he created everything. And again, Fernando, I believe that's why these people who worship Satan created heliocentrism, and all these things lead to hiding God. Right. And even I had a conversation with the pastor yesterday. We talked for quite some time, almost an hour, and we got into the public school conversation. And I said, that's one of the reasons why I chose to homeschool, is because, I mean, here you are, you're at church, you're teaching creation, the book of Genesis. And then the next day on Monday, you're sending your child off to school where the science teacher is teaching them the Big Bang Theory and evolution. So it's important to always seek the truth, and the truth is that we are not on a ball. spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, chasing the sun, and all these other nonsensical numbers, right? So it is important that we share our message that, hey, we are safe, just like our previous message. You know, we're covered by the firmament. There's no asteroid that's going to strike the Earth and destroy us. There's no aliens that's going to take over the world. It's all nonsense. It's all fiction. Right there, there's a fine line between science and science fiction. Even William Shatner said when he came down from his little supposed ride with Jeff Bezos, somebody asked him, what's the difference between science and science fiction? And he said, nothing. And they always tell us. They always tell us to our face. And as far as the tides, I believe the electromagnet energy of the sun and the moon directly creates tides. And by the way, you can look at Alaska and some of their harbors. At some points of the day, the tide goes in 21 feet. Others, it's 30. So there's like a 9-foot difference between the tide. But what a lot of people believe, and again, we're not... as humans, we're always looking to get answers for everything. I don't think God intends us to have all the answers. But again, as humans, we're very curious and we want answers. But one of the most popular theories in the flat earth realm is that the electromagnet, take two. The electromagnet, good grief, guys. It's Monday. I'm recording this Monday at lunchtime. The electromagnetic energy of the sun and moon directly creates tides because of the diamagnetic properties of water. So the sun, which again we believe is close, which is local and small. It's not this giant, being that's 93 million miles away. It indeed has an immediate and local effect on the ocean. And of course, water is naturally diamagnetic, which means it repels a magnetic field. It creates a magnetic field in opposition to an externally applied magnetic field. So the close sun is a positive electromagnetic energy, repelling the water in the ocean, creating low tides, and the moon is a negative electromagnetic energy causing the high tides. And they work together like everything else that was smartly created here, like a perfectly designed machine. And I urge everybody, when the podcast is over, go to the show description. Ashley Webster made a very cool video about 7 years ago. It's had about 100,000 views. And she talks about and actually does an experiment, which you can see for yourself, talking about tides and the electromagnetic energy of the sun and the moon. So check that out. And as far as earthquakes, well, we know that while we say flat Earth, right? And this is one of I get this email all the time. It's not flat like a pancake, right? It's very deep. We know there's holes. The deepest hole in the world is 7.5 miles. So obviously, it's not flat like a pancake. It's got a lot of depth to it, and there are, within reason, some plates, etc., that maybe shift and cause earthquakes. And again, what they tell us earthquakes are and what they really are certainly two different things. But it's not flat. It's the Earth has a lot of depth to it. There's mountains, there's hills, there's valley. It's not this flat pancake. It is round or maybe square, but most of us believe it's round, with Antarctica being the, going all the way around it, which holds all the waters in. And it's affixed. It's solid. It's not moving. Everything moves above us. So, and again, this is one of them things where I wish I had video to show you guys, and that's something that we will certainly do. So there you go. That's it for our voice messages. I thank you all. And again, if you'd like to leave a voice message like everyone else did today, it's theflatearthfiles.com. Click on the link, and you can leave up to a 90-second message. Hopefully I'll get that changed to where you can leave it a little longer. Let's get to our emails first, and it's from Katie from Western Massachusetts. And she joined us on our Fact Hunter program last, I think, summer, maybe in the fall. Tremendous mind. She says, I just wanted to share some information with you and the listeners that I hope will be helpful. The first topic is a flat Earth curriculum. which to my knowledge doesn't currently exist. But for anyone that has Dave's app, of course, the Flat Earth Sun and Moon app, David Weiss's app, you can click on the web icon to get to the video playlist, and two in particular, Biblical Flat Earth and Flat Earth for Kids, could potentially be made into curriculums or at least be used to create unit studies. You could also use content from Eric Dubay, Mark Sargent, ODD, David Weiss, etc. in the same way. The closest I've seen to an actual curriculum is Flat Earth School on Odyssey by Mitchell from Australia, who does an excellent, easily digestible breakdowns of flat Earth concepts. Now, I think I mentioned this on the podcast that dropped last night. The other topic is gravity. That was one of my biggest stumbling blocks when researching Flat Earth because I knew the concept was bogus. But density and buoyancy never really seemed fully satisfactory either. My big question was, what determines up and what determines down? That's when I discovered electrostatic force, which is governed by law. And since it's law, it means it's not just a theory. Every source I've looked at says the ground has a net negative charge. So anything that is even slightly positively charged will be attracted to it according to the laws of magnetism. Density and buoyancy are terms used to describe how attracted something is. For example, the more attracted, the higher the apparent density, or the heavier it will seem. And the fact that it can be manipulated was what sealed it for me. For example, if you have a helium balloon on a string and you tie a metal washer to the string so that it's suspended off the ground, and you increase the positive charge to the washer will actually drop like a stone to the ground as if it suddenly got incredibly heavy, because you increased its magnetic attraction to the ground. The law governing electrostatic force is Coulomb's law, and it was first published in 1785. If you compare it to the later formula for gravity, it looks suspiciously like they just swapped out variables and then started calling it the gravitational formula. Because we know they love to subvert things that are true and twist or invert them to their own ends. Hope this was helpful to the listeners. Keep up the good work and keep your head on a swivel. Fantastic email. That's another rabbit hole for you all to go down. Coulomb's Law, or I think it's actually pronounced Coulomb's Law, published way back in 1785. And this is one of those experiments you can do easily. Record it with your phone and throw it on the internet, and there's another tool in your toolbox to prove the truth. Thank you, Kat, so much again from Western Massachusetts, always bringing great knowledge. Let's go to the next email. And this is from Paul. This is the other email I mentioned the other night. Hi, George. Hope you are well. I recently found out that the two main parts of Antarctica that tourists are allowed to visit are called Deception Island, which is interesting, and Rothschild Island. I haven't heard you mention these and wondered if you had looked into them at all. And Paul hits a home run here. Rothschild Island, sure enough, is named after the one and only Jacob Rothschild. Very interesting stuff. The official wiki says that Rothschild Island is a black, rugged island, 39 kilometers long, mainly ice-covered, but surmounted by prominent peaks of Desco Mountains in Antarctica. The island, again, is named after, at one point, one of the richest guys in the world, Jacob Rothschild. In the subsequent explorations of the area by the British Graham Land Expedition, which was from 1934 to 1937, the feature was believed to be a mountain connected to Alexander Islands. Geologically, this might be true, but it has not been proven by any means due to a lack of anything like a complete geological survey of the region. Now, of course, Rothschild's Island was reaffirmed by the United States Antarctic Service. And of course, this falls under, let me bring this over here, the Antarctic Treaty System, which of course bans, the official story is it's there to ban industrial development, waste disposal, and nuclear testing. But we know the real reason for the Antarctic Treaty System is to keep folks like you and I from finding out the truth. They say there is still a threat to these fragile ecosystems from increasing tourism, primarily on cruises across the Southern Ocean from the port of Argentina. So there's another rabbit hole for you all to go down. Again, Rothschild Island and Deception Island in Antarctica. Our next email is simply entitled Believing. Says, my family has always been kind of awake to everything going on around us. However, my father's completely asleep. Devout Christian, believes in globe Earth, and everyone else in the family is the same. However, my mother, brother, and I have always been awake. We know what's going on in the world, both physically and spiritually. However, I am the only one that believes in flat Earth. Whether it's a disc shape, oval, standing on pillars, or is a ribbon shape folding on itself. I've been trying to get my brother to believe me about this, and he gets to the point where he's like, quote, I think the moon is natural anyways, and then changes the subject. It's like everyone I try to explain myself to about it, they automatically shut it down. I was talking to my mother about it, and I was just asking her all of these questions about gravity, about rotation, etc. And her answer was, I just don't know. Physics. And she didn't have any explanation or even any theory of what it all meant. Just shut down completely and said it's always been round, there's no firmament. And then I brought up the Bible. And she mentions that she's awake. But she still has a different interpretation of the Bible. My brother, on the other hand, this is a conversation between him and I on TikTok. I just don't get how so many people could shut it down so easily, especially if they are Christians, and it says plain as day in the Bible that there is a firmament and pillars the earth stands on. It's very specific about separating the waters, and the firmament is what's holding the waters out. And of course, NASA is the only thing that depicts the earth as being a globe. Every other culture in history depicts it as being flat, including with a firmament. You can go back and look at that. I've shared that before. So just had to come on here and tell you my experience in trying to wake up other people. Even awake people. I've listened to your podcast for a while. I've never really known whether or not it was round or flare, but the more I listen to your podcast, the more like I feel it is indeed flat. And that is something interesting. And of course, that's one of the reasons so many people decide to homeschool is because of what is taught in history, first and foremost, but how science has become scientism, and how the schools have pushed evolution and the Big Bang Theory, et cetera. We've beaten down that bush 1,000 times. So in your quest to, quote unquote, wake people up, I think many people listening to this podcast right now understand your frustrations. At the same time, I've said many times, I look at it from the other side. I too was dead asleep at one time, and I can see myself quickly shutting down the flat earth conversation. And I never, in retrospect, thinking back before I got that email from David Weiss, however many years ago it was, I don't know if anybody ever came to me and said, hey, have you considered flat earth? And that's something that, listen, that people will tell you if you go on like these different websites that this is new. It's a CIA psyop. But I've shown you all this goes back hundreds of years of people trying to disprove heliocentrism, whether it's William Carpenter's book he wrote back in 1885. You can go into Google and just put in flat earth books, and you'll see books for the last a couple hundred of years that have been have been written against heliocentrism. And of course, Copernicus was a Jesuit, and they are known for their deception. So, and like I said, people have to be receptive. They have to be willing to listen to the information. You can only lead a horse to water. And I understand your frustration, especially when many of us feel that we are in such a critical time in the timeline of the world, right? We are living in a world where up is down and down is up and good is evil and evil is good. And I know the sense of urgency that you feel, because I feel it too, trying to get people to listen, to wake up. But at the end of the day, they have to be willing to be receptive. You can't, it's like trying to force feed a baby. They're just going to spit it out. And that's, you just got to leave breadcrumbs, and it's up to the individual. But a big high five for trying to spread the word. Continue on. Don't give up. You never know what nugget of information is going to be the one to crack the nut, right? Crack the shell. So there you go. Let's get to our next email. I don't think I've played this one yet, or I've read this one yet. So let me, in case I haven't, let me cover this one. It says, just started listening to the Flat Earth Files. Bill Cooper exposed the NSA long before the shill Edward Snowden. I've been on this trip for over 30 years. Just a small comment on some things you've said on an earlier podcast. I think it was episode 24, The Moon is a Light. So it gave me an idea and a realization. Mars is copper, and it represents psychic ability. Elon Musk going to Mars, but making brain chips to initiate psychic ability. Gold affects the sun and the sense of self. Spreading gold into the atmosphere through chemtrails is to affect the sense of self. Also, what is Elon Musk's boring company doing? Building the set of Mars. Very, very interesting. And again, if you saw the video from, was it Friday when the SpaceX had its launch? And of course, when they cut to Elon shortly after, I think it hit 38 kilometers in height, started to come back down. They panned back to Elon sitting there, and he was doing the triangle sign with his hand, as he always does, giving the sign to his Illuminati friends. And of course, that rocket, which of course they ended up blowing up, that was $3 billion, guys. So again, this is all twofold. It's deception, and it's to further, greaten the wealth of the top 1% of the 1%. It's always about power, money, and deception. That's what the Illuminati means. It's to be illuminated. The people at the top have this wealth of knowledge that we don't have. And it was interesting. To me, it sounded like some of that crowd noise was being piped in artificially. It really did not sound authentic whatsoever, but obviously, you couldn't miss it when they cut back to Elon again. I think it was right after it started to descend. I think it hit 38 or 39 kilometers. The rocket didn't fire correctly or something. A lot of people were saying that the rockets looked like giant LED lights. That was circulating all around social media. But once again, the fact, $3 billion, and everybody's saying how amazing it was, and the leaps and bounds that we were making in science. How is it that 50-some years ago we landed on the moon, and this 50 years later, getting a rocket up in the air 38, 39 kilometers is a great success? None of this makes any sense whatsoever. Again, I believe Elon is just another player on the world stage. I kind of laugh at all the quote-unquote conservatives that have taken him up to be a champion for the right. This is the guy that wants to put chips in your brain. And shout out to this guy who dropped the email. Very interesting take. Again, Mars is a copper. It represents psychic ability. Elon going to Mars, but making brain chips to initiate psychic ability. Gold affects the sun and the sense of self. Spreading gold into the atmosphere through chemtrails is to affect the sense of self. Interesting. Without a doubt, they're spraying. They're telling us now. I posted something on Instagram at the Fact Hunter last week or so. It was on Good Morning America, I think last Tuesday, where this young girl, she's mid-20s or something, and she's a pilot and proud of the geoengineering that she's a part of now. So again, they're not even hiding the fact that they are spraying the sky whatsoever. Let's see here. Let's go to our next email, if I could find it. Here we go. This next email is actually coming to us from somebody who will be joining us on May 1st. This is Alex. He says, I wanted to reach out and say that I'm a huge fan of your content, both on the Fact Hunter podcast and the Flat Earth Files, as well as the approach you take when discussing flat Earth topics and conspiracy theories, air quotes. Listening to the Ted Kaczynski episode, which we did on the other podcast a few weeks ago, which, by the way, Spotify removed it. Very interesting. So, which I had to find on Podcast Addict. Otherwise, I usually listen on Spotify. The manifesto and his predictions really made me wonder, is he speaking into existence a future he did not want, or was he actually that tapped into the world and the way things were headed? Because he really because he really nailed it in regards to leftists, the insanity of the university professors, and the brainwashing that is happening in post-secondary education. In my life, I would never have thought that Americans would buy into communism, but when you understand human nature and how to poison it from within, it goes to show you that anything is possible if you understand how human nature works. And we do have some lawmakers on the world stage, like your AOC, who has been screaming for one of our journalists to leave the air. And, of course, that is Tucker Carlson. And, of course, if you're an American, you're supposed to believe in freedom of speech, freedom of the press. But here we are. We have many, many folks within the government leadership who want certain voices squelched, and that is communism. There's no two ways about it. There's no way to pretty it up. That is communism. And I agree with you. I never thought I'd see the day, but I'm telling you, the last, since 2008, it's really, things have spiraled out of control. But again, they boiled the frog. This plan has been in place for a long time. But, they've gotten control of everything now, so they don't even have to hide the fact. But it goes on to say that my parents left communist Russia in 1972. They met in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada in 1976. In 1978, I was born, and I'm embarrassed to say that my generation is allowing all of these things to happen when we were the ones supposed to be leading now. Even my father was completely bamboozled by the government-funded news media, which is the CBC up there, and believed everything that they were saying during COVID. Even with me screaming in his ear about propaganda, 1984, he would often call me on the phone in Cochrane, Alberta, which was about 1,000 miles away, and tell me that I was putting him in danger by not getting vaccinated. He said that his wife and children are also not injected with the non-vaccine, and that I shamed him by participating in the trucker convoy. Our media miraculously made the trucker convoy about white supremacy and Nazis, and anyone who supported it was obviously racist and evil. It's embarrassing how easy it is to fool people nowadays. And if you don't know, a lot of people who were involved in that trucker convoy in Canada, many of these people had their bank accounts shut down. I mean, it's next level in a lot of these countries. And the people who were willing to go out and protest these type of events, they have a lot of conviction in their heart because they put a lot of their freedoms at risk. He said, that's enough about that. Let's talk flat Earth. I would like to say that I'm a flat earther, but lately a voice inside me keeps reminding me that the more I'm sure about something, the more likely I am to be wrong. He says, I began my journey accidentally. I started taking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in August of 2022 at the age of 43, the same time my 11-year-old daughter started training. I was listening to Eddie Bravo speaking on the Tinfoil Hat podcast with Sam Tripoli, and they also had Eric Dubé and one of the members of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu family on the show, and they were discussing flat Earth. At first, I listened and thought they had some interesting points, but that they were hilariously ignorant. But I'm a pretty big math guy and a pretty big physics guy, and he says he was an electrical engineering technical assistant for Manitoba Hydro for 6 years and a power electrician for 10 years before he began working with his wife in his business. So he actually started taking a look at the numbers and the calculations to easily disprove them. And when I heard that gravity wasn't real, my brain almost exploded. So I started digging into the curvature calculations and looking at the speeds and the distances that they claimed. And indeed, it is all completely ridiculous. There is no way the sun is 93 million miles away. And the fact that they pretend to know how to calculate that distance is insane and random at best. Long story short, the schools pump you so full of garbage that you don't have time to think or question. You just accept it and move on. That's how it was from grade 11 all the way through university. My epiphany came in September of 2022, listening to Eric Dubay say on a YouTube video that we weren't random space monkeys with no purpose. That triggered me to open the Bible to the first page of Genesis and just read the story of creation as if it was for the first time. And the light bulb just went on so bright, my whole body lit up. School and science do everything they can these days to take us away from the true story of creation, that we actually think it's a fairy tale. I considered myself a person of faith, and then it hit me. How many other people consider themselves people of faith, yet they don't even believe the story of creation? That should be the foundation of our faith. And almost the entire population believes it's a fairy tale now. But not flat earthers. You know how I know the flat earth is good? Because it brings us closer to God. Even if there are a bunch of things that we are getting wrong, something that brings us closer to God, especially in these times, is definitely a good sign that we are on the right track. I try not to say that I'm positive of anything, but I am positive God being our creator, and that is an awesome foundation to have. And then he says if he ever needed a guest for the podcast, he'd be happy to come on. And I have him booked for May the 1st as I look on the big board. And I look forward to having a great conversation with Alex. He says, I want to end my email with this. If we could have a revolver with 6 silver bullets in it to either prove flat earth or wake someone up enough to start questioning everything, what would be those 6 irrefutable bullets that would cause their brains to short circuit and realize something is amiss? And here is Alex's top 6. Number 1, a certified time-lapse image of the stars revolving around Polaris. Number 2, something that disproves gravity. I'm a firm believer in density and buoyancy and electrostatic charge affecting objects. Gravity is just a convenient constant to making calculations easy. Right? The story is a guy was sitting under the apple tree and the apple falls off the tree and hits him on the head and he goes, oh, it's gravity. Right? Brilliant. Next, all flights from Australia, and we're talking from Sydney to Santiago, Chile, with their log times and flight paths. And again, anybody who's flown international has been on that plane with the map, and it's showing you how the plane is going, and it's always going at an arch. It's never going straight across, which is another big red flag. Next, certified non-photoshopped images of the horizon from different heights. And obviously it can't be a GoPro because that is a fisheye lens. This is a big one. And again, this comes up again. Justin Trudeau saying the earth is not flat in 2023 like he's trying to sell us on the globe. The same way this cat was trying to sell people on a magical elixir in 2021 and 2022. And lastly, showing someone that gravity was invented in 1666. The Earth flies around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. The axis of the Earth, it's 23.4 degrees. If you subtract that from a right angle, which is 90 degrees, you get 66.6 degrees. The Earth's curvature calculations and real-world places and objects you should not be able to see from specific distances. Of course, he is talking about the curvature calculations. Says, what if the Earth was a globe, but their calculations were off and it was actually way bigger? These are the things that keep me up. They're lies upon lies. And that is something that we talk about often here, is it is very hard to discern the truth when every single thing is based on a lie. Like the oblate spheroid lie that makes the blue marble obsolete, but no one seems to blink at that. Neil deGrasse Tyson is such a clown, and it's amazing how many people worship him. Same with Bill Nye, the lion guy, and Tony the Rat Fauci. Those guys have destroyed the name of science. He says, my friend is a pilot, and he can see the curvature at 40,000 feet. This bothers me because, again, we have lies upon lies and brainwashing that makes him think that he sees it. And, of course, Neil deGrasse Tyson himself, he was the one that's saying that the Red Bull jumper couldn't even see the curve at 128,000 feet. So what is it? He says, I know I'm all over the place now, but I saw an interesting video of how the month should be 28 days. That is indeed correct. 28 days, 13 months, a turtle's back. I thought I had put it in the show description before. I'm going to leave a quick note. I'll try to remember to put that in the show description as well. That goes back to the Indians. It goes way back. And it also says that April should be the first month. And it goes on and on. Let's see. Anyway, again, Alex will be joining us. It'll be a great conversation. He is set to join us again on May the 1st. Thank you for a great email. Appreciate it. And he says, as he closes, he says he's working on getting better about speaking to people about Flat Earth without getting emotional or worked up about the lies and deception. So thank you very much for taking the time to reach out. It is greatly appreciated. Next email is from someone who will be joining us. I think I have him booked for May the 4th, Josiah. And he says he's been debating whether or not he'd be interested in jumping on the podcast, but he is, May the 4th. He said he used to do video podcasting starting in 2020, early on in the pandemic, because it was an obvious fabrication to me. YouTube started removing my videos, and I figured there was no point in continuing with that, since it would likely influence me to self-censor, even if it was subconscious. And that, the same with me. I walked away from YouTube altogether. My story is one of a long background in Christianity. I studied music at a prominent Christian school in Australia, and then got a job as a creative producer in a large church in the United States. And that's when Flat Earth was first mentioned to me around 2014, 2015. I immediately looked it up because I've always been a curious person and wanted to understand why these people could possibly believe settled science and observance. Of course, the first thing that came up was the Flat Earth Society, as we all know, is controlled opposition. And it worked. I immediately saw how crazy it was, and just looking at the disk in space amongst the other planet was completely ridiculous. Anyhow, fast forward to 2020, when the occult overplayed their hand. That year before the pandemic, I went through a divorce, lockdowns. He had a bad time during this time frame. I'm not going to get into everything. We'll leave it for him to tell us when he comes on. But he basically said God woke him up. He began to question everything. One of his good friends shot him a short Flat Earth video every couple of days. And slowly but surely, after watching about 30 or so of his little 1-minute clips, I began to think, maybe I should look deeper into this. and he started with NASA, and NASA immediately was revealed as liars 100 times over. We've all seen the videos, with people moving slowly with the gravity and then, parts and things falling straight down. We've seen things disappear with the green screen. We've seen people rolling through the back on harnesses, people doing their flips in place. You can see the harnesses on their pants. Very fake. It's very interesting. He said the first video that really got his attention was the first spacewalk, which looked like a crappy 1950s King Kong animation, which it was here now that we're in the 2020s. Very poor animation, obviously fake. He goes on to say, so I thought if they lied about that, what else? And that's what every single person should be asking themselves. If they lied about one of mankind's greatest accomplishment, what else are they lying about, right? The moon landing easily fell apart. And again, Hebrew NASA means deception. I think it's pronounced Nasha, right? It's that obvious. But just because NASA was a lie, and this is a good point, just because NASA was a lie, it doesn't mean that we live on a flat plane. That just disproves NASA as another one of these black op funds, and it empowers the military-industrial complex and the bloodlines, right? The people at the top of the food chain. Goes on to say one doesn't necessarily mean the other. In the same way as just because planets look round doesn't mean the Earth is on the opposite side of the argument. That one's easy too. Just because a light bulb is round doesn't mean the room it lights up is round. Just because NASA lies about going to space just doesn't mean space doesn't exist. So I decided to test it through the biblical sense. Since my faith was something I've tested more than anything else in my life, and it has held true through it all. He said, I trust the Word of God more than anything else. So what does the Word of God say? Picked up his Bible, read first Genesis, and immediately saw that we were created out of water, not a vacuum of space. I saw God placed a firmament in the midst of the water. In Hebrew, rakia, which means a firm structure, as a molten looking glass. And within the firmament structure, he placed the sun, the moon, the stars, etc. Through further studies, I found Michael Heiser, who he said rest in peace. I guess he passed away. He works with the Logos Bible software explaining the ancient Hebrew cosmology. The way that they literally understood the creation to be was in fact a flat plane with a firm structure above and Sheol below. And I started asking myself this question. Were they wrong or are we wrong? It's one or the other. Now, if the Word of God is where I go for truth, then shouldn't the goal be to understand what the writers believed and wrote about? If they truly believed the cosmos to be that way, then who am I to ignore that? I couldn't get that out of my head. The writers of truth believed the earth to be flat. Am I to ignore that part and believe the rest? Fast forward to 2021, where I can say for sure that I know the earth is a flat plane. I've done an incredible amount of research, and I can confidently tell people for a matter of fact, and I see their demeanor physically stumble when I do. The confidence is astounding, and I think people around me are secretly researching it now, which means you're doing a great job, Josiah. Keep it up, keep spreading the word, and we look forward to having you on the program on May the 4th, which is when we're recording it. It'll come out later, a few days afterwards. But you'll be hearing from Josiah in the coming weeks. And thank you for the great email. We linked up, had some great conversations. And again, he will be a part of the program here in the next few weeks. I've got 2 left to read, and then we're going to get into the Coriolis effect, which also was addressed by a listener. And once again, we have another email from someone who decided to come on the program. and that's Kevin. He'll be coming on the podcast. He said he found the podcast a little over a few weeks ago. He couldn't stop listening to it. He's also listened to some of the other podcast episodes from the Fact Hunter to try to expand his knowledge of the real truth because it is so hard to come by these days. I discovered your Flat Earth File podcast on Spotify because it popped up in the podcast I may be interested in, which is so interesting. I get so many of these stories that it's actually the way I get censored and the way it's popping up in people's recommendations. It is really, really odd. He's from Wyoming. He's married. He's a 1-year-old daughter. Grew up in a Christian household and believed in Yahweh and Yeshua for the majority of his life. Now, he said he had his awakening experience last year when he had COVID and had to stay home for 7 days from work. During that time, oddly enough, he was scrolling through TikTok, and for some reason, a video of biblical truth and flat earth popped up. He said he was very intrigued by the thought because the evidence was laid out and presented very well. From there, he tried digging a little more, but couldn't find a whole lot worth listening to because so much was being censored. So I resorted to finding the truths on TikTok, since it was the only way to get glimpses of what I could consider truth. Then he discovered Flat Earth Dave, Eric Dubay, and a few others that led me to my whole reality being shaken. And indeed, it is quite an awakening. I didn't know what to do with all of this, and that's when my life changed. Yahweh gave me the answers I've always wanted without me knowing I even wanted them. I was so awe of his creation, whether it be our stationary earth, the sun and the moon, the wandering stars, and everything else I have yet to discover. Everything is so fascinating, and it blows my mind. I know I'll probably never be able to understand a fraction of how things function or how he made them, but I'm still going to keep searching for the truth through other people's knowledge, through his word and through my own eyes day to day. And that's key there. Believe what you see, believe what you hear. Again, you could give somebody a football, and then some guy with a lab coat will walk up and say, that's a baseball. And they'll say, well, he's the subject matter expert. I guess this is a baseball. Believe with your eyes, believe with your ears, believe with your heart. Goes on to say the truth sets you free, but, and this is an important point, it will also make you look like an outcast or someone who's been shunned from their family just from, this experience. Because, when you have your awakening experience, the first thing you want to do is you want to share it. That was my first, I was like, my gosh, I've believed a certain way for 40 some years, and we've been lied to. And then once you research more and you go down and you try to disprove it, and you're like, I can't believe, the first thing you want to do is share it. But then you're like, are these people going to take me seriously? Luckily, my wife was the first person I shared it with, and we're two peas in the same pod. She was very receptive. She's a huge David Weiss fan. She gets his video every day. He sends short ones out during the weekdays and the weekends. He sends longer ones out. We were running errands today. We were listening to one of his recent interviews. It's so interesting to hear the questions that people ask. It is quite, when you challenge someone's belief system that have been in place for, guys, it's been, some people's belief system has been in place for decades. To flip a switch in the matter of moments can be overwhelming. And I think, maybe some of y'all have been awake since day one and understand how the world really works, and you understand the level of deception that we deal with on a daily basis. And then there's folks like, I don't know how to explain it, like myself. I've always been a Christian and a Bible believer, but I never took the time to discern what you're taught in science class versus what's in the Bible, right? And that was never addressed in my church. It just wasn't. And that is the biggest obstacle. You want to share the information so badly. People have and that's the thing when you think about it, you can have a conversation with your family and friends with no problem about the space landing, about July 20th, 1969. The 201st day of the year, the big Jesuit number, 201. Just like the suite the Pope stays in, 201. Just like Event 201, the big practice run back in, was it October of, I can't keep track of the time anymore. I guess it would have been 2019, just, a few months before the pandemic, air quotes, really kicked off. Anyway, that is something that this, who was this? Kevin. Sorry, Kevin. Kevin is talking about, right? The truth sets you free, but it also makes you look like an outcast or someone who is shunned from their family and friends just from opening your eyes, right? That is quite a pill to swallow. It says, I've always been a truth seeker from 9/11 to the government, NASA, and everything beyond that. And isn't it funny how we never connect the dots on that? Like, yeah, NASA's a fraud. Sure, the moon landing's a fraud, but certainly we're on a globe. And I'm telling you, if you take the time to look at TV programs, movies, the globe is in everything you watch, in the background, subtly placed in the background. And all this is done on purpose. If you've never gone down the rabbit hole of Edward Bernays, that's one of my podcasts on the Fact Hunter. You can research it for yourself. This guy understood how the human brain worked and how to manipulate it. And I think one of the big events that happened in our country's history here in America, folks, was the War of the Worlds radio episode from, I think it was October 31st, 1938 or 39. And you had 7 million people going crazy, calling 911. Well, they didn't have 911, but, calling the operator, shooting water towers. They're like, holy cow, these people will believe anything you tell them. And they ran with it. Goes on to say that everything seems like a lie these days, from the news to what we are taught in school and even day-to-day life. I mean, think about it, guys. No matter what part of the political spectrum you're on. I'm out of the political game whatsoever. But if you think, you had people saying that January 6th was worse than 9/11. Think about that for 1 second, guys. Just stop. Let's take flat earth and put it aside for a second. You had people who were running our country, supposedly running our country in the highest places, the president, vice president, saying that January 6th was worse than a day where 3,000 Americans died, right? There's a big difference between a hoax and a false flag. People die in false flags. 9/11, there was 3,000 people who died, okay? I think, sadly, one of the police officers from January 6th had a stroke and died the next day. I am the type of person who never mocks any life. Oh, it was only one person. No, that was one person who died who had loved ones. But you cannot compare the two events together. It's absurd. It's insane. And I think most people who are logical laugh when they hear something like that. Are you kidding me? Right? That's like saying a hot dog is better than it. It's not even close. You guys get what I'm saying, okay? Anyway, back to the emailer. You can't escape all the lies because it seems like it's all around you. And then he says, I hope you get this email and come on the podcast. And sure enough, he is coming on the email again, and we look forward to having him. He says, God bless, and look forward to speaking to us soon. And again, Kevin, we will be having our conversation May 14th, and it'll be released sometime within the week thereafter. I usually schedule, at least 3 or 4 days apart so you guys can enjoy them and not have to play catch up. So great email. All the emails have been fantastic. I have one left, and then we're going to get to the Coriolis. So, hello. Like the majority of your listeners, I've been digging through the rabbit holes seeking knowledge. My journey started with child slavery, mental health, and what is reality. During the biggest takeover in the last few years, I've come to discover that climate change is fake. Of course, you've got this Greta girl who out of nowhere, of course, these people are the world stage is scripted, and she was not an accident. She didn't accidentally come on the world stage. The parts of Elon, which of course you go back to Werner von Braun's book. What was his book called, by the way? Here we go. I think it was released in the 50s. It was called Project Mars, A Technical Tale. And it was, of course, Werner von Braun, the guy who came over from Nazi Germany and took over NASA. And the book he wrote, again, the main protagonist was Elon. And if you really break down Elon's name, the EL, we talk about mockery in the truth community. They love to mock God. That's why the number 33 is always prevalent with these people. But of course, the first two letters of Elon is L. And what, of course, L means the Most High God or the Exalted One. It is all mockery, 100%. Now, how did I get from that to there on this email? Oh, climate change. We're actors on the world stage. And the pharmaceutical companies, governments, and corporations are all a scam. Indeed, they are. Again, they like you to think you have a choice, right? You can vote for person A or person B. 330 million Americans, two people to choose from, are supposed to represent. It's just a joke. And it's to keep us divided and arguing amongst ourselves why they continue to steal from us and hide knowledge. That's what it's really all about. Says it was hard to let go of climate change and it felt like a punch to the gut, but I instantly knew my nephew was right in the words, quote, climate change is fake. You were right when you said they overplayed their hand during COVID because it led me to Flat Earth. Yes, I was indoctrinated like everyone else and thought I learned that there was all I needed to know. On top of that, I patiently waited for David Attenborough to release the next groundbreaking video. Said I used to watch 10 documentaries a week on platforms like Documentary Heaven about space and all the other subjects that were available. Said I saved your podcast on Spotify in February 2023. I think she meant saw. I saw your podcast on Spotify in February of this year, a couple months ago, and thought that sounds interesting. When I need something new to listen to, then I will give it a try. So she saved it, put it aside. In March, Justin Trudeau gave his speech on Flat Earth and COVID, and I made a video with that on Rumble. If you haven't checked it out, go to Rumble, the Flat Earth Files. I'll try to remember to put it in the show description. Sub to it, and check out that video, and leave a comment, and like it if you enjoy it. That's actually a video that I made myself, not just one I shared, like copied it and put it in. I made that little video myself. And I'm an old dude. I'm pretty proud of myself for that. Anyway, she says, well, okay, you know what I did. Obviously, I grabbed my phone and said there is something he doesn't want us to know about Flat Earth. And I needed to know why. I turned on your show, and within 15 minutes of listening to your channel, I understood that the Earth is flat, NASA is fake, and they're hiding God. I want to thank you for having your podcast called Flat Earth, as it is the reason I was able to find your content easily. Now that I finish your episodes, I patiently wait for each new release. On a final note, besides the content and suggestions that your guests make, I find it difficult to gather more sites or podcasts to discover information on the topic of Flat Earth. So please keep your podcast name and keep the guests coming. You are the number one rated in my books. Your friend in Flat Earth. And a lot of listeners from Canada. Thank you, from Alberta, Canada. That was a very, very kind email, very interesting email. And I should say, and I think it's probably one of the reasons she mentioned it, is I do get people who say, hey, man, you need to lose the Flat Earth mantra for your name. And I get it. And I've replied to these people and said the same thing. Like, I get it. I understand. To me, it's biblical Earth. Some people want to use the firmament within the name of the title, but it's very important. This is how so many people have found the podcast, by putting Flat Earth into their search engine, whether it's Amazon or Spotify, wherever they listen to their podcasts, and it brings it right up. So for me to tinker with something that's working, I'm one of those guys, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. And we've woken, a lot of people up. These emails I read are like 1% of the emails that I actually get. I'm looking at my file here. I think it's been 338 in the last, is this 45 days, 60 days, whatever it is. And I do my best to keep up. It's, for me, I get these emails. Some people put so much thought, time, and effort into it. And I don't want to be the guy who I just send a quick email back and be like, hey, thanks for listening. Which I will do if I get something disrespectful. I will even email, reply to them. But I won't, I'm not going to be rude, I'll just say, hey, thank you for listening. Take care, But I truly do my best to reply to people with thoughtfulness, and because some of the stories are just overwhelming. When you get an email that said, I listened to your podcast and it brought me closer to God, that's like powerful. And I'm so humbled to even think that this was just on a whim. I was like, you know what? There's so many people who don't like to talk about Flat Earth. When I mention it on my podcast, I get a lot of hateful emails, so I'm just going to keep it separate. It'll be my little place to vent and share. And I figured that there would be, we'd get 50 or 75 listeners a day down the road, and we could have a neat conversation, and it would be our own little spectrum to share knowledge within. But it's taken off, and it's very overwhelming, the responses I've gotten. And I do try to respond with thoughtfulness, and I hope everyone understands my thankfulness for you listening, because a lot of work does go into this, a lot of time. It is time consuming, and but it is important to me. The truth means everything to me. Please understand that I was a guy who spent almost 25 years of his life in the Army, and then when I retired and I really went down the rabbit hole and found out the truth about 9/11 in Iraq, and I had very dear friends of mine who were killed over there. As a Christian, you don't want to have anger brewing within your heart. You don't want that. But at the same time, I said, how can I take this knowledge and help change people's minds, help change people's views about how this world really works? And, we're told, Satan is deceiving us nonstop. Everything is, look how he tried to deceive Jesus. And I'm just George here from Delaware. So, he's putting a spin on me. I just want to say, this is what I believe. This is how my life kind of went about. And I don't think that anybody should, I don't want to get off topic here. I'm just very adamant about the truth. That's all I want. And we are lied to every single day. And again, it's hard for us to discern what is true and what is not when everything is based on fallacies. It's all lies. And we deserve the truth. And the people who are put in positions of power should be held to a higher standard than us, not even the same. You see the war criminals that are still running wild loose. I was very angry the day that George Bush, I think last fall, was making a speech, and he had that gaffe about Iraq, and he just laughed it off. I'm like, are you kidding me? Evil people that deceive us and think that, you stay home, you keep your mask on, and you shop at Amazon and Walmart so the rich can get richer, and we're going to crush your mom and pop stores, and we're going to close your churches, and if you dare question us like the trucker rally in Canada, we're going to close your bank accounts. And it's just evil. All of it's evil. And, the truth will set you free, and everyone should demand the truth. And if you look at everything, especially if you've listened to my other podcasts for all the years I've been doing this, disproving everything from Pearl Harbor to 9/11 to the Gulf of Tonkin, on and on and on, the Titanic, for goodness sake, we wouldn't have the Federal Reserve. Well, I shouldn't say that. Eventually, I'm sure it would have happened, but they had to get certain bankers out of the way. And if you think that a couple of those bankers like J.P. Morgan just changed their mind at the last minute, you have to understand it's all a lie. And that's why the Flat Earth is so important, because it does bring a lot of people back to God. And really, is the ultimate, treasure trove of seeking the truth, because it is the most important truth out there, and it is the biggest lie out there. Indeed, it is. It is such a valuable tool to the evil people who run the show down here. So, last email, which will bring us into the Coriolis effect. And shout out to Billy. We've been talking back and forth. Billy says, I have a question for you. When I was in sniper school in the Army, I was taught to account for the spin of the Earth and its curvature, which is, of course, the Coriolis effect, when shooting at a target over 1,000 meters. And I'd like to take your take on this. And I said, so I'm just going to read what I replied. I told him that 2 of my 4 tours to Iraq, we were subauthorized snipers on our MTO, which is our, like, if you're in an aviation unit, you're going to have X amount of helicopters authorized to you. If you're infantry, you're going to have that. There's like a personnel MTO and there's an equipment MTO. If you have 80 soldiers, you're authorized 80 M4s and so on and so forth. But in certain mission types, you're authorized different things. During these tours, I was in charge of acquiring some of the additional equipment. I purchased scopes. I purchased barometers, the wind readers. They have these really cool devices that will give the sniper the wind right there so he can make his adjustments. But that entire time, the word Coriolis effect was never mentioned to me. So what I did was I pulled the field manual for sniper training, which is FM 23-10, and it's available online. Anybody can check it out. And I couldn't find the word Coriolis or Coriolis effect mentioned anywhere whatsoever. And again, I'd mentioned that before planes had GPSs, pilots, theoretically would have to account for this, but they didn't, right? And I said I would address this in an upcoming episode. But I also went back and said, by the way, I had to correct myself. I was no way implying to Billy that he wasn't taught this in sniper school, right? I was just going off the information I researched. I'd spent 2 weeks down in Fort Benning in Georgia before I deployed to Sarajevo in the spring of 2000. But I mean, I nothing to do with sniper school, which I think is a 7-week course if it's still the same. So, but what I wanted to say is, hey, listen, I'm just going off the information I had. I wasn't trying to imply that you weren't taught that in sniper school. I wasn't by any way or means trying to be disrespectful. And Billy replied back, no worries, that's what I thought. But he said, the funny thing is, when I went back to my notebook from school after you mentioned the FM, the trig problems were already worked out. And I was told it accounts for this. After doing my own math, it does not account for the spin or curvature. It looks like you can add the Coriolis effect to the list of lies. I like the model of Earth you use, but I hate it being called flat Earth because even your model isn't flat. Of course, it's hills, valleys. That's just the name. I don't know where maybe that's something I need to investigate. Where did the term flat Earth derive from? Because it isn't flat. Obviously, we have hills, mountains, valleys, canyons, the Grand Canyon, all of these different things. So I wanted to read one thing, and I have a 7-minute audio clip, and then what do you say we call it a day? Now, you can go to the Encyclopedia Britannica, you can go to the Wikipedia pages, and they have cool illustrations and bouncing balls that are showing you all these different things. And this is by Great Mountain Publishing, the great Edward Hendry, who I've referred to many times on this program and my other podcast. He's quite a truth seeker. He says, the problem with the way it's described, both between the Encyclopedia Britannica and the Wikipedia, is first and foremost, it has no basis in fact. If the Earth were indeed a spinning globe, the Coriolis effect would be manifested. But the problem is that there is no such Coriolis effect taking place on the Earth. Okay? That would mean the Earth is not spinning. And again, it goes back to the pilots don't factor in. They factor in wind, but they don't factor in the rotation of the Earth. The different directions of rotation of hurricanes in northern and southern latitudes has nothing to do with the claimed Coriolis effect of the spinning Earth. Airplanes that fly north and south do not adjust their flight paths to account for any Coriolis effect. For example, assuming the heliocentric model with the Earth traveling at more than 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, the Coriolis effect would cause a plane flying from, let's say, Buffalo, New York to Miami to fly off course in a westerly direction due to the supposed faster spin of the Earth as the airplane approaches the wider circumference of the Earth at the latitude of Miami. Yet in reality, the flight in Miami arrives on time and without the pilot having to adjust for any Coriolis effect due to the rotation of the Earth. So let's take a minute, and I want to play this audio for you. It's about 7 minutes, and it does a good job explaining. And this is from the Flat Earth Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. That's entitled Coriolis Effect Debunks Flat Earth. And again, this will be in the show description for you to share with your friends and family.
In the mid-19th century, a Frenchman named Gaspard Gustave Coriolis performed several experiments showing the effect of kinetic energy on rotating systems, which have ever since become mythologized as proof of the heliocentric theory of the cosmos. The Coriolis effect is often said to cause sinks and toilet bowls in the northern hemisphere to drain spinning in one direction, while in the southern hemisphere causing them to spin the opposite way, thus providing proof of the spinning ball Earth. Once again, however, just like Foucault pendulums spinning either which way, sinks and toilets in the northern and southern hemispheres do not consistently spin in any one direction. Sinks and toilets in the very same household are often found to spin opposite directions, depending entirely upon the shape of the basin and the angle of the water's entry, not the supposed rotation of the Earth. From science.howstuffworks.com, quote, "While the premise makes sense, that the Earth's eastward spin would cause the water in a toilet bowl to spin as well, in reality, the force and speed at which the water enters and leaves the receptacle is much too great to be influenced by something as minuscule as a single 360-degree turn over the span of a day. When all is said and done, the Coriolis effect plays no larger role in toilet flushes than it does in the revolution of CDs in your stereo. The things that really determine the direction in which water leaves your toilet or sink are the shape of the bowl and the angle at which the liquid initially enters that bowl." So even mainstream science publications admit the so-called Coriolis effect has absolutely no effect on the behavior of water in sinks and toilet bowls. But this fact doesn't deter scammer opportunists in Ecuador and other tourist traps along the equator, where a popular parlor trick is performed using a portable sink to purportedly prove this Coriolis effect. First, the showman sets their sink, already filled with water, perfectly along the equator line, then pulls the drainage plug, showing their audience how the water drains straight down the hole. Next, they pick up their portable sink and walk their gullible audience several meters to the south, into the southern hemisphere, explaining how the Coriolis effect will now cause the water to spin clockwise down the drain. This time, they purposely pour water into the sink from the left-hand side, and quickly pull the drain plug while the water is still spinning clockwise from the angle it was poured. Next, they pick the sink up again and move the magic show a few meters into the northern hemisphere, explaining how the water will now spin counterclockwise. To conclude the show, they then pour water into the sink from the right-hand side, making sure to quickly pull the plug while the water is still spinning counterclockwise. The Coriolis effect is also said to affect bullet trajectories and weather patterns as well, supposedly causing most storms in the northern hemisphere to rotate counterclockwise, and most storms in the southern hemisphere to rotate clockwise, to cause bullets from long-range guns to tend towards the right of the target in the northern hemisphere, and to the left in the southern hemisphere. Again, however, the same problems remain. Not every bullet and not every storm consistently displays this behavior, and therefore cannot reasonably be used as proof of anything. Many professional snipers have stated unequivocally that they never have to factor or compensate for this supposed Coriolis effect. Sniper bullets are actually affected by wind, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, sight aperture, and human error, not the alleged spin of the Earth. From snipershide.com, quote, "I've shot at 2,000 meters, and whoever says Coriolis effect is a factor is full of it. Wind, and more crosswinds will play games with your bullet more than anything else." And from sniperforums.com, quote, "I shoot at distances up to 3,000 yards, yet I have never experienced a need to compute for Coriolis effect. I have killed deer out to 1,000 yards and never had something go awry that could be attributed to Coriolis." Ironically, the same people who claim sniper bullets are affected by the Earth's spin are the same people who claim planes, helicopters, and hot air balloons are not affected by the Earth's spin, because the entire atmosphere is somehow magically adhered to the Earth and dragged spinning perfectly along with it. These globe Earth apologists cannot have it both ways. Either the atmosphere is independent of the Earth's alleged rotation and can affect bullet trajectories, or the Earth and the atmosphere move perfectly together and therefore can have no effect on bullet trajectories whatsoever. If they claim the former, and the atmosphere is independent of Earth's alleged rotation, then helicopters should be able to simply hover in place and in 12 hours be halfway around the world. Or if they claim the latter, that the Earth and atmosphere do move together, then they are admitting that the so-called Coriolis effect is non-existent and could have no effect on bullets or weather patterns.
And what he's saying is you can't have it both ways. Either you have Coriolis effect or you don't. You can't say it affects bullets, but it doesn't affect air travel. It just, you either have it or you don't, right? Two things I want to talk about before we bounce off. I'm looking at you, National Geographic. Number one, the National Geographic is just one of many examples of massive deception. The Earth is supposed to be spinning again about 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. Because the circumference of a ball is smaller north and south than the equator, the Earth does not spin at a speed at higher and lower altitudes, right? Portland, Oregon, for example, is at 45 degrees north latitude from the equator, and the purported spin of the Earth at that latitude is approximately 700 miles per hour. Portland, Maine, is at 44 degrees north latitude, with the spin of the Earth only a tiny bit faster than 700 miles per hour. The Coriolis effect is supposed to put the airplane in New York if the pilot simply tried to fly the airplane straight and level toward Portland, Maine. This is simply not true. The pilot sets his heading toward Portland, Maine, and accounts only for wind conditions. The pilot is making no accommodation whatsoever for a Coriolis effect because the Earth is not spinning. Therefore, there is no Coriolis effect to calculate. The National Geographic alleges that military aircraft and missile control technology must calculate the Coriolis effect. The National Geographic cites to no authority for its statement for the simple reason that no authority exists. No authority exists because it is not true. The National Geographic is simply making things up to fool the gullible public into believing that the Earth is spinning at an incredible speed. And of course, lastly, if there were any spin to the Earth causing a Coriolis effect, it would have been discovered by now. Yet every year, in every single experiment ever performed to detect motion of the Earth has returned as a null result, going all the way back to the Michelson-Morley experiment, which we talked about in the early episodes of this podcast. Real-life experiments have proven there is no Coriolis effect on Earth because the Earth is stationary. Governmental educational systems, however, persist in pushing the myth of Coriolis effect on a supposedly spinning Earth. Indeed, they must argue that there is a Coriolis effect, because if they let it be known that there is no Coriolis effect, that would let the cat out of the bag that the Earth is stationary. and NASA would be out of a job. For example, anyway, we'll stop there. That's the perfect place to stop. Thank you guys for your emails. Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. We have so many great interviews coming up. Can't wait to share them with you over the coming days and weeks. And again, this will run through about the end of the third week of May. We'll take a bit of a hiatus for 10 days, 2 weeks or so, and we'll get back. Batteries are charged, ready to go. I hope we have brought you some quality information. Again, it's my goal to start putting some time into some videos so you can share it with your family and friends. Because again, video is such a great receptor, and people can understand it a lot easier than having to sit down for an hour and a half and listen to a podcast. But I'm grateful to everyone who has reached out. We've made some great friends of the show from this, and again, greatly appreciate everyone. Take care. Reach out. Again, it is the Flat Earth Files at gmail.com. Little technical glitch with the music there. The Flat Earth Files at gmail.com. And of course, the website, theflatearthfiles.com. Jump in the forum, jump in the chat room, introduce yourself, and hang out with like-minded people. Thank you guys so much. Take care. And until the next podcast, my friends, keep your head on a swivel. God bless each and every one of you, and we'll see you.
T-Mobile has invested billions to light up America's largest 5G network, from big cities to small towns, including right here in yours. And great coverage is just the beginning. Right now, families and small businesses can save up to 20% versus AT&T and Verizon when they switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today.
Plan savings with 2 to 3 lines of T-Mobile Essentials versus comparable available plans. Plan features and taxes and fees may vary.
Hey, hon, we really need new phones.
T-Mobile will cover the cost of 4 amazing new iPhone 15s, and each line is only $25 a month.
New iPhone 15s? Best new year ever.
Get 4 iPhone 15s on us with eligible trade-in when you switch to T-Mobile.
Minimum of 4 lines for $25 per line per month with autopay discount using debit or bank account. $5 more per line without autopay, plus taxes and fees. Phone fee at 24 monthly bill credits for well-qualified customers. Contact us before canceling account to continue bill credits or credit stop and balance on required finance agreement due. $35 per line connection charge applies. See T-Mobile.com.